Does your orchid look more like this than like this? We're going to talk about what's causing it and how to fix it. Hi, I'm Jess. Welcome to Attainable Green. Today we're going to be talking about orchids in stress. I'm going to share with you 3 scenarios about stressed and dehydrated orchids and some things that we can do to fix and help these plants. In the first scenario, if it's bad and it's really bad, then chances are the plant is dead. I'm sorry to say it, but it's time to just KonMari the plant, thank you so much for your service, and send it on its way. That way you can move on and get a new plant, right? Before we get to that point, let's back it up. Let's talk about what the plant looks like in this current stage. At this point in time, the plant looks pretty dead. Let's just say that the majority of the plant is brown and dry. And that means if you touch the leaves, they're really wrinkly, dry, they crumble, they may even completely fall off the plant. That's a sign that this plant is dead. Not only that, but if you check the roots, they're also really crunchy, really crumbly, and they have no green in them, then that's also a sign that your plant is dead. And the third sign is if you look at the stem of the plant, if you have a monopodial plant, then it's also brown and dead, and there's no green, no life, no juice or water in the plant, then that also means it's dead. For a sympodial plant, if it has pseudobulbs, canes, bulbs, that sort of thing, and all of those reserves are dried, wrinkly, brown, empty, hollow, that sort of thing, I'm sorry to say that if your plant is at this stage, the plant is dead, and there's no hope to recover the plant. But that's okay, because we can use this as a learning opportunity to start over with a new plant or figure out if another plant is getting close to this stage, we can do something about it. So even though you may have lost this particular plant, there is always another opportunity to try again. Now, for scenario 2, let's say it's not that bad. I mean, your plant is not dead, it just has a couple wrinkles, it may look a little floppy, but overall, it's in pretty good shape. So I would say that this plant is actually doing okay. And this may have happened because we have forgotten to water once, maybe for a week, maybe for 2 weeks, maybe you're gone for an entire month. And this is what happened when you returned, and all is not lost. So what you have to do for this plant is just water it. Usually if you soak this plant for a couple of hours and then you let it dry off, the plant will perk right back up. So this is just more of a temporary setback instead of a more permanent one. Not only that, but this may take a couple of extra watering sessions to get your plant back up to optimum health. So this is definitely reversible, and it's just a temporary sign of water stress or dehydration. So what if you're in the last scenario? In this one, it's something in between, where you've watered it more than once and it's still looking a little wrinkled, but it's not to the level where it's dried, brown, crispy, and dead. So in this situation, it's a little bit more complicated because you might have to do a little bit more digging to figure out what's wrong with this plant. So the 3 main areas to focus on is the general life cycle of the plant, the health in terms of disease, or in terms of pests. And those are the things that we're going to look for to figure out how to remedy this plant's stress. So in the first one, is it the natural life cycle of the orchid? Some orchids lose their leaves, they become deciduous, they may even go dormant during the winter season. And then come springtime, it'll be a little bit dehydrated, a little shriveled, and it's going to start some new growth. So if you have a deciduous plant, then it's part of its life cycle to kind of drop leaves, to turn brown, to do all of those things that might seem like it's stressed, but that's part of its natural rhythm. If it's an evergreen orchid, that means it stays green all year round and it doesn't tend to lose that many leaves, then if it's starting to lose a lot of leaves, then you know that it's an issue. If it's a watering issue, then you can definitely see if it's been dried for a while. You may have to increase the waterings or bump it up. Another thing is you may have to unpot this plant, check the root system to see if it's nice, healthy, and green, and see if it's alive. The roots of orchids can come in all sorts of different shapes and colors. Some may be green, some may be white, some can be brown and fuzzy. There is a wide variety. So if you know what your orchid roots are supposed to look like, and you can tell if it's dried, mushy, hollow, it smells bad, something like that, then you know that the roots are gone. And that's why the plant is dehydrated. So if the roots are having a problem, you know to just trim back all the dead material, pot it up in a drier, airier mix that would help the plant to release new growth and new root growth so that it can sustain the plant. Of course, if you do this, then you know that they're going to stress out the plant a little bit more, so it might look worse before it gets better. And since it's spring right now, this is kind of the perfect time because new growth should be coming out, new roots should be emerging, so it's a good time to repot the plant. So next is a disease issue that can cause stress on this orchid to make it look dehydrated and to make it look unwell. Usually it's a bacteria or fungus that tends to attack the plant, and you can tell the difference immediately because there are two ways to distinguish if your plant is sick. So if it's a bacterial issue, you will notice it immediately because number one, it will attack the plant very fast. So it can take down a plant in less than a week. So if you see something happening and it's spreading within a couple of hours to days, then you know that's a bacterial issue. They tend to replicate really fast, especially in hot weather or in ideal conditions. So that is something to be aware of. Not only that, but bacterial infections tend to be really stinky. They tend to have kind of like a wet leaf look and kind of soggy bulbs, that sort of thing. So that kind of rot is really telling of a bacterial infection. To remedy a bacterial issue, you have to act quickly. So the first thing to do is to cut off all the contaminated tissue, and you want to sterilize and clean up the remaining plant. You can use hydrogen peroxide to seal the wound, you can add cinnamon to seal the wound, and you just dry off the plant. You want to maintain a healthier environment for this plant. So if you need to, you can wash this plant to make sure it's nice and clean before repotting it in new media and just in a newer setup that stays a little bit dry for a couple of days so that all of the wounds can heal and that the plant won't have any subsequent bacterial infections. Unfortunately, there isn't really antibiotics that you can give a plant, so this is the only way we can ensure that the plant can stay healthy at this time. Once again, because you've been removing dead tissue and removing parts of the plant and disturbing it, the orchid is going to suffer for a little bit before it recovers. It's going to look worse before it gets better, but that's okay because that's part of the process. As for fungal issues, they are a little slower. So if you notice that your plant is slowly declining over weeks and months instead of days or hours, then it's definitely more of a fungal issue. This can be kind of like a mold, some white spots, some fuzzy spots, some other discolorations on top of either the media or the plant itself. Sometimes this can look like leaf spotting, black spots, and this can affect the appearance of what the orchid can look like. When it comes to dealing with a fungal issue, you want to treat it similarly to a bacterial one. So you want to remove all the contaminated material if possible. Otherwise, if it's something like leaf spotting, then there's nothing you can really do to improve upon that, but you can stop it from spreading. One way you can do that is you can clean up the plants itself, wash it down, make sure there's no fungal spores or anything coming out of the plant, change out the media itself, and repot it. You can use a Physan 20 solution to kind of clean up your plant, or if you want to do something a little bit more heavy duty that's targeted towards fungus, then a fungicide like Phyton 27 could be beneficial for you. If your plant doesn't have a disease issue, it could also be a pest one. And with pests, you can tell because there's little bugs and things crawling and moving about on your plant. Some move faster than others, so it's a little bit hard to tell. But I think the more common pests that you may see are mealybugs, scale, thrips, and spider mites. Now, usually pests are a secondary problem to a stressed orchid. So if you notice that, that means something has happened to the plant originally, which could be dehydration, that has caused these pests to be attracted to it. Now, there are specific ways to deal with each individual pest, but overall, if you wash the plant, remove the pest manually, either through a spray or rubbing alcohol or just wiping down the plant, that tends to clean up the bulk of the initial infestation. But to prevent the eggs from hatching and all of the other things, you have to break the life cycle of those pests, and that's where pesticides may be useful, or in the case of spider mites, a miticide. So if you have those in combination with cleaning up the plant and manually removing the pests, that way you can help deter the pests from coming back. In this intermediate stage, it really is kind of a hit or miss depending on what is going on with the plant and how long it takes for you to intervene and for this plant to recover. I would say it's on the level of weeks to months before the plant is fully recovered instead of in a few hours or days. You may see the initial effects of the treatments or the pest removal on the plant, and so the plant will be a lot healthier in the immediate look and appearance. But over time, you won't really notice that the plant is fully healthy and has come back until a couple of weeks to months later. I have a couple of plants that have been rehabbing for several months now, and you don't really see huge drastic changes, but you notice that over the year or 2 years, that's when the plant will really start to shine. It'll start blooming, it'll start growing a lot of new growths, it'll just look great and healthy, and that's just a sign that you know it's been fully mended and that it's fully recovered. So that is a huge overview about stressed orchids, how to take care of them, what it looks like, and what to do about it. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments below, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And make sure you check out the playlist on orchids for beginners so that you can learn all about orchid care and how to take care of orchids. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!